Hi, I'm Steve Morris with the Oregon Technology Business Center. I'd like to invite you to join us on December 11 for our program Assess Your Startup with the OTBC Assessment Checklist. You can watch it live on a Google Hangout broadcast or come and see it at the OTBC office. Now, what I'd like to do today is give you just a brief overview of what's in the workshop. Now, first a question, why do you even need an assessment checklist? Well, potentially a number of reasons. Number one, if you're a first-time entrepreneur, it's a little overwhelming. There's a lot to do, and you may be worried about not doing the right things. The assessment checklist can definitely help with that. Things like what really should be the things you do first. But even if you're an experienced entrepreneur, you can miss steps. And again, it's helpful to occasionally assess where you are and see if there are some steps you didn't complete that maybe you should spend some more time on. It helps you understand how close you are to being investor ready, and it gives you a useful template for working with mentors, because mentors too sometimes need a reminder of really the full range of activities that are important for a startup to cover. And then finally, this is a different audience, but investors actually need to do due diligence before they actually make an investment decision. Well, the assessment checklist is a pretty good start on an investor's due diligence checklist. Okay, so what's actually in the checklist and the content of the workshop? Well, the checklist is roughly ordered in chronology of a startup. So early actions first, later actions later. Now clearly things tend to overlap, so this is just a rough chronology, but still having some order does help. Now the spreadsheet, which is what the checklist is, and it's an Excel spreadsheet. It begins with just some basic background information. That's really handy to have when you're using this to talk to a mentor. But then jumps right into the checklist of assessment topics. First of all, business model validation. A lot of steps to make sure that you've covered the bases in making sure that if you build it, they'll buy it and you can actually make money doing it. And then early on, once you have validated your business model, there are some important startup infrastructure steps that you should be taking, like setting up a legal entity. Again, a number of things that you need to consider in doing that. And then there's a lot of work to be done just making headway, creating traction before you're going to be of interest to investors. Now, through that process, the challenge is, how do you fund the startup when you're not investor ready? Well, again, we have a list of things that you should be looking into for early stage funding options. Also, the more headway you make, the more financial planning and financial strategy you'll be working on. We have quite an extensive checklist of things you'll be needing to address in that area. And the further you get, the more startup operations you'll be implementing as you bring on more people and so forth. We have an extensive list of things you'll need to do, you'll need to know about as you get into that process. And then as you get closer to being investor ready, you'll need to develop what we call the sales tools for raising a round. There's a checklist for that, and a checklist for the due diligence materials that you'll need to be putting together that investors need to see. And finally, once you have all that, you're ready to actually go raise funding. Now, the checklist doesn't go through the actual fundraising process. That's a topic all by itself and a topic really for a whole other workshop. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a preview of an idea of what we'll cover in the assessment workshop. It is a very useful tool. I hope you can join us on December 11.